Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. The S-hole spin, that's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. In a meeting at the White House, President Trump allegedly called Haiti, El Salvador, and some African countries S-holes. The president was talking to congressmen and senators privately who wanted to let hundreds of thousands of people from these countries into America. The president reportedly suggested bringing in people from places like Norway, and all hell broke loose on CNN.
The president seems to harbor racist feelings about people of color from other parts of the world.
It just shows that, the president has racist views. I mean, how long do we have to dance around that issue?
A white from Norway can come here, but a black dude from Haiti can't. What does that tell you in an America that in one generation called you? What does that tell you, Don? I can tell you that what that tells like me. We're no different than we were a generation ago, and we're learning the same lessons that we learned when we called a Chinese man, when we called a man from Guatemala, and we called a black man.
Wow. Listen, what the president said was offensive. It was crude and not helpful. The president's blunt, sometimes too blunt, and this was one of those times. But the president wants what's best for America, like an immigration system based on merit, not skin color. Putting America first is not racist, it's patriotic. But the real story is how the left, specifically CNN, covers tough talk depending on the party. President Obama called Libya an S show after he led from behind and the country turned into a failed state. Was he racist? That president also famously referred to people in middle America as bitter clingers.
They get better and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or anti-immigrant sentiment, or anti-trade sentiment, and a way to explain their frustrations.
Now, Hillary at the time called that demeaning. Then 8 years later called those same people deplorable.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
I've been at parties with liberals who've called Queens an S-hole. Queens. I've heard liberals call Detroit an S-hole. And I've heard dozens of Democrats call Middle America a lot worse than an S-hole. Not only that, how many times have you heard the left call cops racist, call the military a bunch of Nazis, and regular hardworking Americans hicks and right-wing extremists? Democrats have actually compared Republicans to ISIS. Where's the outrage on CNN? Democrats have been calling America an S-hole for decades, but Trump says it about a third world country and gets savaged for it? We can say this: he's always been proud of being an American, unlike some people.
For the first time in my adult life, I am proud of my country.
They're not whole countries. For one, Donald Trump isn't their president.
CNN is outraged about the suggestion from people that came from Norway that they could contribute to the betterment of America. I thought the left thought Norway was heaven on earth. They've been telling us for years that Norway has the best healthcare system, the most peaceful people, the most refined political system. In fact, Norway was ranked the best democracy in the world. And Trump is racist for saying he wants more Norwegians? So the bottom line is, as I said before, what the president said was offensive. It wasn't classy, and it gave his enemies a chance to distract from his agenda. I just wish the press defended America with the same passion that they defend other countries. Joining me now, Fox News politics editor Chris Stirewalt. So, Chris, obviously this is a major blow to the president's momentum coming off of these talks about immigration. But do you personally believe saying something like this makes the president racist?
Well, good news about me and my job. It doesn't matter what I personally believe.
But I'm curious what you believe.
I have no idea the quality or condition of any other human being's heart. That's between them and their maker, and I'll leave it up to them to decide how they feel about anybody else.
Well, I know personally, because I've spent some time with the president, that I don't believe he harbors any racist views in his heart. He has a big heart, and I think he wants what's best for America. Do you think it's fair for other networks to label him a racist for saying something like this?
Well, I don't watch CNN.
Well, I'm sorry you had to see those clips at the top then.
But I will say this: Chris Wallace gave a great speech not too long ago, where he talked about the dangers of getting the press broken by Trump, and that when Trump says and does outrageous things, or even things that are inappropriate or things that are wrong, that the press uses this as license to misbehave themselves. Members of the press use this as license to misbehave themselves. And if you look at the glee, the childlike, the sophomoric glee with which many outlets, not just the cable news network, but lots of outlets, print and digital and broadcast, all went over getting to say this word, this dirty word,
right,
and talk about it. It was sort of reflective of like, hey guys, act like you've been here before. There are serious matters to talk about here. There are two serious matters to talk about here. One's on the substance of policy about whether which kinds of immigrants from which kinds of countries should the United States give preference to,
right,
in terms of admitting. Remember, we have to take in about 1 million permanent legal residents a year into the United States just to make up for the fact that essentially we have low birth rates
but,
in the
I mean,
country.
can you say that that's what the president was getting at? He was talking about bringing in people from other countries and the rationale that you use to decide on who gets to come in.
Sure.
He was inartful at saying that, but just because maybe you don't want to overemphasize bringing in people from impoverished nations, from nations riddled by corruption, doesn't that necessarily, it doesn't make you racist, correct?
When it comes to talking about whether a person is racist or whether a person's a Christian or whether a person is this or whether a person is that, those are all matters of the condition of their heart. Those are all matters that they have to sort out.
That's fine. And you said
right,
that before, but the methodology with which you then select nations to, form your immigration patterns, that's inherently not racist. That's normal. That's what Canada does. That's what Australia does, correct?
It is. There is nothing empirically wrong,
right,
with a country choosing to give priority to one country over another. The danger for the president so the danger here is twofold. The most important and pressing danger for the president in this administration is that Dick Durbin, who was a Democrat who was in that meeting,
right,
his attitude and disposition towards this deal, and more importantly, his willingness to take heat from Democrats over working with the president to come up with a deal.
This is not going to help, right?
On DACA. This puts Durbin in a terrible bind because
he doesn't want to be seen as cooperating with someone that harbors views that many people in his party think are inherently racist.
Right.
Can I ask you, you listened to my commentary at the top. There is a difference between how the media treats Democratic politicians or Democratic voters when they paint large swaths of the American public, whether people from the South, people that own guns, Christians, with a broad brush and disparage their belief system. They call them names. They've compared them to ISIS, to the Taliban. That's never challenged. I remember, I think it was Dick Durbin himself that compared American troops in Iraq to Nazis. And he took heat from that fairly, but not to this level. Do you understand the distinction which I'm upset about?
I believe you. But I will also say this, that media criticism, I don't care what particularly CNN programs in a given hour. I don't care. The great thing about the media landscape today is the most powerful name in news, it's Fox News.
Right.
We have a broad, variegated media landscape in which people are able to find competing and differing voices. This is not the time that it was 25 years ago when 3 broadcast networks, 2 newspapers, and a wire service essentially got to dictate the narrative for the whole country.
No, you're right. It's very diversified right now. It just seems to me the Democratic Party has thrown in so heavily when it comes to refugees, when it comes to migrants, and at the expense of American citizens. And that's one of the reasons Donald Trump was elected, I believe, because he tapped into those people that felt that they hadn't been given a fair shake, whether they were veterans, whether they were factory workers. When illegal immigrants or dreamers, they're talked about all the time glowingly by the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, and they're given favors and they're prioritized. But no one talks about the coal miners in West Virginia or the people that have lost factory jobs in Wisconsin. That's the difference, I believe, in this debate.
Well, I'm from West Virginia, and I can say this. There has been a lot of coverage this year and in the past 18 months about Trump voters and places like West Virginia.
You're right, and that's a good thing.
That has been a huge focus of media attention, trying to reason out why the election went the way that it did.
And Trump drove that attention.
But I will say this. Whatever you think about, whatever any person thinks about where immigrants ought to come from and which countries ought to be prioritized, and all of those other things, and the priorities that the president ran on and that his voters supported, what happened this week, if you think about it this way, on Tuesday, Trump was sort of at the high watermark of his presidency so far.
Yep.
He conducted a successful bipartisan meeting on this subject that had Democrats walk away saying, hey, maybe we can do a deal here. The possibility of comprehensive immigration reform was on the table.
You're right.
The success of the tax cut legislation and all of these things had accreted to what looked like Trump at a pivot point or at a moment where the presidency was going to take new gusts.
But isn't this what happens a lot with this person? Whether it's when he gets off of a great speech and then he sinks the momentum, whether he comes off an amazing inauguration and then he sinks it. You know, the Mueller stuff, it's like extreme highs and extreme lows. And that's what we're seeing right now. But I just want to get back to the original point that because you want people to come to this country to contribute, that are successful and that are talented and that are well educated, that doesn't necessarily make you a racist. That makes you someone that wants to improve wages, to improve the standard of living among your own citizens. Of course, there are incredibly talented people from Haiti, from El Salvador, from the continent of Africa, of course, and we want those people to come to America and achieve success and contribute. But we just want to look at the way we treat immigrants through a merit-based system. And I believe that's getting lost in this huge, I guess, scandal, if you want to call it, or media firestorm over the S-hole word. And I'll give you the last word.
It is important then, if you hold that worldview, that when you are talking to a crucial member of the Democratic Party, maybe the most important voice in terms of getting legislation passed, that you not use derogatory, unnecessary, incendiary language when referring to these places, that you have to actually bend over backwards to be twice as careful to make the point as inclusively and as even-handedly as you can. And there's just no room for error on stuff like this.
I agree. It was an unforced error, and it's going to cost them a little bit with this immigration situation. But hey, you know what? Like we said before, highs and lows. You never know what's around the corner next week. Chris?
That's for sure.
I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Up next, a Watters World investigation of Oprah. Oprah Winfrey this week burst onto the political scene when she gave a rousing speech defending the press and praising the Me Too movement. Now, the calls for President Oprah started immediately. NBC actually endorsed her. Look at this. Nothing but respect for our future president. Hashtag Golden Globes. So let's treat Oprah like a legitimate presidential candidate. Watters World did a little investigation on her political profile. Here is what we found. Oprah's net worth is $2.8 billion, and President Trump's is $2.86 billion. Her peak viewership was 12 million viewers per show. Trump's Apprentice had about 18 million. Oprah has given large donations to the Democratic Party, as had Donald Trump, but we could not find any donations to a Republican from the talk show queen. Oprah has had a few controversies over her long and illustrious career. She refused to have Sarah Palin on her show before the 2008 election. She's hosted medical acts with shaky credentials and highly questionable results. Her all-girls school in Africa was rocked by a physical and sexual abuse scandal. Her close relationship with serial sex predator Harvey Weinstein raised some eyebrows. Even fellow celebrity Seal had this to say. "Oh, I forgot. That's right. You'd heard the rumors, but you had no idea he was actually serial assaulting young starry-eyed actresses who in turn had no idea what they were getting into. My bad." Also, she was asked by the BBC in 2013 about how to deal with racism in America. Her answer: people need to die.
As long as people can be judged by the color of their skin, the problem's not solved. As long as there are people who still, and there's a whole generation, I say this, I said this, for apartheid South Africa, I said this for my own, community in the South. There are still generations of people, older people, who were born and bred and marinated in it, in that prejudice and racism, and they just have to die.
On policy, we don't know much. We do know she believes in gun ownership with increased background checks. She also has straddled the fence on immigration, saying we need a path to citizenship and strong law enforcement at the border. So would Oprah be a threat to President Trump? And what does it say about the state of the Democratic Party to draft their own celebrity billionaire? Here to discuss, Director of Urban Development at Turning Point USA, Candace Owens, and civil rights attorney Leo Terrell. All right, ladies first. Candace, what do you think about Oprah? Is she a threat?
I think she is a pretty natural progression in the Democratic game of identification politics. I do not deem her a threat whatsoever, no.
Well, she is be a self-funder. She's got very high favorability ratings. The media would love her. They'd propel her candidacy pretty aggressively. That's got to be an advantage, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a similar advantage that Hillary had, and it didn't exactly work out for her.
Well, she has a lot more charisma, Leo, than Hillary Clinton. I think we can't agree on much, you and I, Leo, but I think we can all agree that Oprah has charisma oozing out of her pores. You probably would love to see Oprah in the race, would you not?
Oh, sure. You asked Candace a very straightforward question. Is she a viable candidate? Here's the answer, yes. And you failed to mention all the praise a guy named Donald Trump has laid on Oprah. He claims she's a great person. Oprah has likability. In the last 24 hours, Donald Trump doesn't have that. That is why Donald Trump fears Oprah. Oprah is well-liked. The crooked Hillary comment can't be applied to Oprah. Yes. She has associated herself
I would
with some
say
people.
that she's a likable person. I would agree with that.
Very
but
likable.
Once you step into the realm of politics, your likability goes down about 20 points, and half the country hates you, Candace. So, knowing what we do know about Oprah, and you heard what I said at the top, she seems to like to straddle the issue. I don't think she's far left, but, she seems pretty mainstream. What my concern is, I don't know what her policy would be on ISIS, on North Korea, on unfair trade practices in China. Does she know enough to be president?
I don't think the Democratic Party cares so much what she knows. They think about what she represents, which is simply put a distraction from the fact that the Democratic Party brought us slavery, they brought us the KKK, they brought us Jim Crow laws. It is just another guise, another ploy for them to distract voters by saying, look, it's a black woman. Don't pay attention to all of the dirt of everything that we have done to put black people down. I'm not convinced. Trump 2020 for me.
Okay, that's an interesting point, Leo. Respond to that, but also respond to the fact when you do nominate a female or a minority, it definitely insulates them from a lot of criticism. And the candidate, whoever runs against that person, has to be very careful, because if you say anything that can be construed as sexist or racist, they will just get pounded. That has to be an advantage for Miss Winfrey.
Excuse me, I just saw an election last year. First of all, let me address Candace's comments. See, she cannot attack Oprah, so she goes back and gives us a historical perspective about the Democrats, the KKK, and the 60s. We're not talking about that. We're talking about 2020. Now, let me be as clear as I can. Oprah's a viable threat. You know why? That TV show that you mentioned she had, that played very well in Kansas, in Oklahoma. Middle America loves Oprah, and that's Donald Trump's biggest fear. What's not being mentioned is this. Donald Trump didn't have any political experience. And Donald Trump surrounded himself allegedly with some good people. He
the
should
only
listen to
thing
their
I would
advice.
say to that,
So,
Leo, in terms of Donald Trump's political experience, he'd been writing and speaking publicly about policy and politics for
Wrong
3
on a lot of
decades in
issues.
New York. So I don't know if Oprah's been doing that. She's been doing a lot on cooking and on books and feeling good. But you know
Oprah
what?
is a
I don't want to put her
social
down because I
activist.
do agree with you, Leo. I do agree that she has a big appeal to people in middle
Yes.
America, especially
Oklahoma,
women.
Kansas.
Especially women. Now, I want to
Yes,
get to
she
something
does.
else first. The opposite of middle America. This is something Chelsea Handler tweeted. Ready? Holy bleep.
Okay.
Bleep. I just watched the video of Trump's bipartisan meeting yesterday. Hey, Lindsey Graham, what kind of blank-sucking video do they have on you for you to be acting like this? Wouldn't coming out be more honorable? Leo, she's basically gay baiting a member of the U.S. Senate with despicable language. This can't be good for the left. I mean, this is just embarrassing to you, is it not?
I don't know who Lindsey Graham is. I mean, I recall
He's
this
the
guy
senator from
going after Donald
South
Trump.
Carolina.
Well, yeah, he's the senator. Come on now. He's senator, but he went after Donald Trump hard. Now he's tweeting out pictures of him playing golf with Donald Trump. Is he worried about losing his tea time with Donald Trump? Why has he turned around? I don't
Leo,
understand
are
the
you
change.
suggesting that a politician might change his opinion on something? I can't believe it. I've never heard that
Let me think
before.
about that. Let me think about that. Yes.
Yeah, never heard that before.
I'm surprised.
And Candace,
yes.
I want to tease something else up for you. I want you to tell me what you think about Chelsea, but also this soundbite from Robert De Niro. Go ahead.
This idiot is the president. It's the emperor's new clothes. The guy is a fool. Come on. Our baby in chief has chief, I call him.
That's not going to help ticket sales. I mean, what do you think about that? Atrocious. And the left loves this.
They do. And the left at this moment in time is absolutely apoplectic. I think it is embarrassing that Leo cannot admit that what Chelsea did was absolutely wrong. Any sane person can admit that what she tweeted out was wrong. It's not a surprise. We're talking about Chelsea Handler, and we're talking about Robert De Niro. We're talking about Hollywood. And that is a tool that the left uses to employ against voters, that they think, oh, this is cool. Bashing a president using this language is cool. It's absolutely unacceptable, and it is absolutely disgraceful.
I will give Leo the last word against my instincts. Go ahead, Leo.
Thank you very much. Very short. The boogeyman left. The left. I'm part of this monstrous, scary group. I'm afraid right now. I'm done.
All right, Leo, listen, I think you guys should clean up the mess in your own house with the Weinstein stuff. You guys have no moral high ground to preach about anything anymore. So let's just nip that in the bud. Guys, I got to run. Thank you very much. All right, so Watters World's been feeling a little stressed, so we brought in a therapy llama. Up next.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Kelly Wright in New York. Frayed nerves in Hawaii today after a false alarm prompted fears of an incoming missile attack. A phone alert warned more than 1 million people of an incoming ballistic threat and to seek shelter. Officials minutes later issued a clarification citing human error as the reason for the alert. Officials at the Hawaii Emergency Center said it was a mistake, while the Speaker of the Hawaii House said someone just pushed the wrong button. A spokesman for the emergency center said in a routine internal test started at 8:05 Hawaii time this morning when a shift change went into effect. It involved the emergency alert system, and 2 minutes later a warning test was triggered statewide. By 8:13 the statewide danger warning message was canceled. Officials also stressed the state emergency management had not been hacked. I'm Kelly Wright.
This week is the anniversary of the infamous Trump dossier. BuzzFeed released it to the public without verifying a thing in it. And to this day, not one thing has really been corroborated, according to the Fox News Brain Room. The Trump dossier alleged several ridiculous smears, like claiming Mr. Trump went to Moscow and employed prostitutes to urinate on a hotel room bed once slept on by President Obama. The dossier claimed Russia had tapes and then could use them to blackmail Trump should he become president. What has been corroborated was that Hillary Clinton paid for the Russian dirt on Trump. Now, fast forward to this week. Investigative reporter Sarah Carter has sources who confirm that Hillary-funded fake dossier was used by Obama's FBI to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. Now, Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, sued both BuzzFeed and the dossier's creator, Fusion GPS, saying the document defames them. Joining me now is the woman breaking much of the developments in this story, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, and former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. All right, so Sarah, tell us about what you know about the dossier and how it was used as a justification to get the warrant.
I think this is the most interesting part. Here we have a dossier, and remember, April 2016, the DNC Hillary Clinton campaign, through their attorneys, hire Fusion GPS to dig up dirt on President Trump and his relationship with the Russians. And now what I found out from my sources is that the dossier was used in part to justify warrants to basically spy and surveil President Trump and members of his team. The sad part is that other than Carter Page flying to Moscow and other than open source reports that the Russians don't like Hillary Clinton, nothing else in the dossier is verified.
Yeah, no one even knows anything about Carter Page. So tell me quickly, to use an unsubstantiated political hit job, you take that piece of paper and you give it to a judge and the judge signs off on a warrant based on that? How unusual is that?
I think it's very unusual. But look, I think that we're going to find so much more than just about this dossier. I believe there has been, and I've been told by sources, systemic FISA abuse. So systemic abuse of getting warrants to basically listen in and
under the FBI.
That's right.
With James Comey and under Barack Obama.
That is correct, Jesse. And I think that what they're going to discover is that when you look at this dossier, in the end, it appears to be, by the U.S. intelligence sources that I've spoken with and others overseas, that this was a disinformation campaign by the Russians. So the Russians actually used this dossier to put in false information.
So we either got duped by the Russians or Hillary paid for the duping herself.
And
either
unknowingly.
way, it's completely embarrassing and has led to a lot of these investigations. So, Dan, connect the dots for us. What are you hearing from your sources?
Well, Sarah's spot on, and the dossier story is horrifying. But riddle me this, Jesse, right? Mike Rogers, who at the time is the director of the NSA, he goes and visits Trump on November 17th, right after the election, about 10 days after the election. Conveniently, right around the time the sensitive compartmented information facility goes up so he can talk to Trump privately. He tells nobody, which offends the Obama administration, by the way. I'll get to that in a second. The very next day, Jesse, what happens? The Trump team magically evacuates Trump Tower and heads up to Bedminster, New Jersey. By the way, the Obama team objects to this entire meeting. What do you think happened? I think Sarah kind of hinted at it. Now, I can't confirm it for sure, but I'm working on this like she is.
Okay, so your allegation is that potentially that the Obama administration's aware of the surveillance going on at Trump Tower. The National Security Agency head comes over to Trump Tower and tells the president-elect, you know what, you might want to conduct your transition business at Bedminster at your golf club in New Jersey. Maybe this isn't the place to do it. And the Obama administration is a little upset by that.
But, yeah, Jesse, conveniently, he waits about 10 days after the election when they're relatively comfortable that WACA, the White House Communications Agency, the Secret Service, TSD, someone has a facility up in Trump Tower called the SCIF where they can talk privately without being monitored. What do you think he said to him? And by the way, combine that with one other tidbit. You can look this up. This is all out there on the internet now. The April 26, 2017 Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court document that clearly indicates there has been information shared by the FBI, culled in the database monitored by the NSA, that's been shared with private contractors and third parties. Who are they? Nobody knows, but that's a pretty interesting question.
Okay, so it looks like political espionage, Nixonian, and we're going to get to the bottom of it because a lot of the investigators on the House side are really starting to crack down and issue subpoenas and threats. Sarah, looking forward on this, is there anything else we can expect to come down in the next week or two?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that right now that the House Intelligence Committee has had an opportunity to really review all the FBI testimony between witnesses, how this dossier was even utilized as in part to obtain a warrant. Now that they've had the opportunity to look at that, I say watch out for next week, because a lot of stuff is going to come down the pike, and I think it's going to be quite explosive.
All right, Dan, Sarah, thank you guys very much. We're going to continue to follow the fake dossier scandal. Up next, the man who says coming out gay to his parents was harder than coming out as a Trump supporter. My next guest says it was easier coming out as a gay man than it was to announce his switch to the Republican Party, saying, quote, "A number of my friends no longer have time to see me. Lifelong acquaintances now regard me with fear and distrust. No, I am not a sex offender. I am something even worse than that. I am a Donald Trump supporter." Adam Levine joins me now. All right, so Adam, when you first came out as gay to your family, what was that like? How did that go?
Jesse, I just wanted to say I'm a really big fan, so thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much. You have great taste, Adam.
Thank you. It was not a big deal. I'm not saying it was this way for every American gay young person. My family was very liberal. They're very open-minded in many ways. And I never defined myself as a gay person or homosexual. I just came out actually from an internet cafe by email in about one line, because I was just so sick of anyone being able to use it over my head, and I wanted to move on with my life.
Okay, so you come out as gay, and I assume most people in your family and your friends were accepting of that and cool with it, and it wasn't much of an issue, I assume. Could be wrong, but I assume.
Yep.
And then
you're right.
You come out as a Trump supporter, as a Republican. How did that go?
Well, Jesse, let's just say that I never directly came out to them still, because
now
I
you're
just wanted
pretty
to
out
avoid
because you're
that
on
situation.
television.
Exactly. And they found out indirectly because people would read my Facebook posts and then report to them. And I didn't want to hide it. I just wanted to avoid having any kind of contentious confrontation with them, because, you know, it's good to get along with your family.
Were you more fearful of coming out as a Republican than you were coming out as gay?
Yeah. I would say more broadly than my family, it's mainly a problem that I've had with the gay population in Los Angeles and as well with the liberals, but I think it's particularly bad among LGBT.
Okay, so as a gay Trump supporter, how have you been treated by the people in your social circle or family? Because I know your father was a Democratic congressman.
Yeah, my father has been great. He's been as supportive as he is capable of, which is much more than I can say for most of the other liberals his age or my age. The level of openly accepted bullying, shaming, and shunning that I and thousands of other Trump-supporting gays and straights have to endure every day it's astounding.
Well, I thought the
it's
left was supposed to be tolerant of other viewpoints, other sexual orientations. You're saying that's not true?
I'm saying not only is that not true, I think the left has gone 180. You know, in 2006, a Yale law professor coined a term referring to gays in the workplace called covering. And covering refers to the forced hiding, the coerced hiding of crucial aspects of oneself. Now, I don't see gays that have to cover anymore. There may be some, which I'm not saying that there aren't, but what I do see rampantly in Hollywood and in LGBT life is Trump supporters that have to cover. They have to hide the fact that they support Donald Trump or incur some sort of massive biblical wrath.
Listen, if you want to make America great again, you got to fight the fight. Adam, thank you very much.
Absolutely, Jesse. Thank you very much.
Using llamas to de-stress. It's happening in our schools, and we have one on set next.
Always better when we're together. Yeah, look at them stars and we're